All right, it's Dr. Schiller. Welcome. So, title of this little discussion today is Four Secrets to Making Meditation Truly Effective. So that meditation is transformational and actually creates real healing in your life. And I'm speaking to that question because it's related to what I hear from so many of my students and patients. And we're talking about people who are dealing with really difficult stuff like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, complex regional pain syndrome, neuropathy, pain and difficult stuff that conventional medicine can't really fix. And sometimes the symptomatic treatments aren't even acceptable because of side effects or inefficacy. And other stuff, right? Whether it's anxiety or depression or just dealing with living with a chronic illness or a degenerative illness and the distress that that causes. Those are heavy, heavy burdens to carry. And so how do you deal with that? How do you use contemplative practice effectively? One of the questions one of my students asked this week in class was, well, how do we do this and bring it to day-to-day life? It feels so good while we're doing it, but we can't meditate all day long, right? Like I have to live. So how do I bring those worlds together? What I hear from some people is something like, it feels so good when I do this practice. My pain goes away. I drop into a place of calm and clarity. My body feels better. My mind feels clearer. My emotions feel better. I get insight and awareness. And then I come back to life and everything crashes down and I'm like, was that a dream? Did I wake up from my dream or was that real? What's real? Is the meditation life real where I don't have pain and I feel good and clear? Or is this real where I'm suffering all the time? So that's where the rubber hits the road. And that's where the thing is, how do we make it real? And how do we break down that gap? How do we dissolve that gap? So that the meditation practice and the state of mind and body and spirit that you get to is actually what you're living with. So that your life is not defined by the disease process or the pain. So that your life is defined by your freedom to choose your state of mind and body. So that you can choose to live in a place that's more open and expansive and insightful, where you're more connected to a sense of purpose and possibility, where you're less dragged down into the heaviness, into the darkness, and into the pain. So in my experience over 30 years or so, doing a lot of this practice and also sharing it with a lot of people, there's four main points. And let me just kind of elaborate on those lightly. And this is a Facebook Live, so if you're hearing this live or if you're hearing the recording, I really encourage you to put in questions or comments. If I say something that resonates like true, not true, hard, not hard, love that, hate that, bring it on because it's in the conversation that the learning happens. And it's not just the conversation where you agree with me, but some of the best moments are when my students go, what? No, that doesn't feel true, or that felt whatever it is. If there's a challenge, if there's a conflict between what you're hearing and your experience, that is not a problem. That is a learning opportunity. That is a little knot of reality that it's waiting to be opened up and flower and show you something beautiful that you haven't seen before. So let's just unpack this. What are these four things? The first one is sort of the obvious one everyone sort of would think, which is build the skill, right? Meditation is a skill, and we're not taught that. And in fact, most of our reality is the opposite of meditation. One of the ways you could define meditation is when you pay attention in a specific intentional way. And that's what meditation is. You're paying attention, whether you're paying attention to your breathing or a candle, the name of God, some sort of scripture, your body, some sensory experience, you're paying attention and you're giving your attention and you're building your attention. And what day-to-day life tends to be is being pulled in every other direction, especially with the everywhereness of social media and the fact that our attention spans are going down and we're getting sucked into so much stuff. And the agenda of that stuff is not your healing. The agenda of that stuff is not you coming to a place of focus and clarity and compassion and presence and love. The agenda of that stuff is to grab your attention, to weaken your attention, to make you a slave to what they want to make you a slave to, so that you spend the money or you give them the attention or they get their advertising dollars. And so it's a war. It's a war to build your attention, to build your skill, to build your capacity for presence. The other three of these are parts of building that skill, but they're different aspects. So everything is kind of connected to everything else that I'm about to say, but I'm breaking it down into these four parts. There's build the skill, there's the perfection of imperfection, there's kiss your monsters, and there's choose life. So let's unpack what I mean by that. Part of build the skill is just practice. You practice paying attention. And when you get distracted, you realize it's okay. Oh, I'm distracted. I'm thinking. I'm lost in emotion. I'm spacing out. I fell asleep. Okay, what are you going to do about that? You're going to have a dramatic sense of, oh my gosh, I'm failing. I'm not making it. Oh, this isn't working. My mind always gets distracted. Number one comment, I can't meditate. My mind is too busy. That's complete nonsense. If your mind is busy and you get distracted a lot, then you got lots of opportunities to bring yourself back. And bringing yourself back is what it's all about, because it's a discipline. We know from scientific studies and brainwave studies and all sorts of amazing stuff that you've got something called your left prefrontal cortex. It's about modulating emotion and maintaining attention and focus and clarity. And it's in relationship with your limbic system, those parts of your brain that are wow with excitement, whether it's for bad or for worse, fight, flight, freeze, difficult stressors, triggered traumas and emotions and memories. And when you build left prefrontal cortex in relation to that overactivity, that limbic system, that's when you develop stability of your mind. And it's work, it's practice, just like any other skill. Why is a great violinist a great violinist? Because he or she has practiced and practiced and practiced. They weren't born that way. They may have been born with a tendency that they cultivated. But the reason you get good at anything is through practice and intention and attention and a willingness to make mistakes and come back and learn and grow. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is the higher faculties of your consciousness. We're still on building the skill, but this is relevant to the whole picture I'm going to talk about, because your heart and your soul have intelligence and vitality and aliveness. There's actually a lot of work that's been done research-wise on heart-brain coherence. And heart-brain coherence is when you're I don't want to get too technical, but it's like a synchronization or resonance. And basically generating positive motion in your heart and feeding that to your brain stabilizes brain function. And so you can do that with certain techniques. There are compassion generation techniques. There's energetic awareness techniques of building that warmth and that caring and compassion. And that's part of what stabilizes consciousness. It's part of why I teach that in my meditation classes. You build the power of your heart and your ability to turn on that loving kindness energy of your heart. And that's part of what stabilizes your brain and your focus and your awareness. A related note is the energy of your soul. And in my world, in my tradition, we have a higher consciousness. We have an elevated divine soul. And you can relate to that. If you don't believe in the soul, you can think of it as your higher intentions, your sense of connection to other people in the world, your sense of a collective, your sense of something bigger than you, that the world's bigger than you. And that activates a certain part of our brain. And I'm looking forward to the next 20 or 30 years of brain imaging when we start to study spiritual experience in a really deep way to see what happens when we connect to the God experience. Because people have had the God experience forever, and you can be an atheist or agnostic or religious. You can't deny the reality that there is a God experience that human beings who are open to it are frequently able to have, that gives them inspiration and connects them to these higher faculties of generosity and love and transpersonal awareness. In my tradition, that sense of love and expansiveness builds consciousness. It builds your capacity to pay attention. Presence, awareness, is built from Chachma and Bina, which are higher levels of consciousness. That's a whole other topic. The point is, you're building your skill by building your consciousness, building the consciousness of presence, left prefrontal cortex, and using whatever you believe in, whether it's the power of your heart and compassion, the power of your soul, or both, to stabilize and build that consciousness. So that's number one. Number two, perfect imperfection. This is so big, right? Because most of us are conditioned and trained from a very early age to think that we need to be some kind of perfect. And it differs depending on who you are and what your experiences are. But we all are averse to mistakes and failure. We've all experienced blame, humiliation, shame, lack of love, lack of attention, whatever it is, those things that we miss out on when we make mistakes. And it's all different for everybody. But we get a culture to think that we want to do things right. And that's great. It's good to do things well, to hit the bullseye, to win, to do all that good stuff. But if you want to succeed and grow, you got to be willing to fail. You got to be willing to have something not go well and be able to go, wow, this could be a great learning experience. Let me unpack it. Let me learn from it. And on some level that happens every time you try to meditate and you get distracted, where you start thinking or planning your lunch, what you're going to eat for lunch, or your shopping list, or thinking about what happened yesterday, or planning the future. You could see that as a failure, but it's really an opportunity to build that return to awareness, and it's an opportunity to build compassion and forgiveness. If you're walking around with a lot of self-blame and shame and self-hatred even, or blame and shame towards other people, that's a toxic mind state. And that takes you out of presence and compassion. And by meeting it and greeting it and welcoming it, this gets to number three, but let's stay where we are for a second, about embracing the imperfection and realizing that we're not here to be perfect. We're here to grow, and being open to that and forgiving that and allowing that and cultivating an intention that, wow, every time I meet imperfection in myself or someone else, for the purposes of this practice, I'm going to drop my judgments. I'm going to drop my mental judgments. I'm going to be aware to my emotional reactivity that might come up and suck my energy into a negative thought pattern about myself or somebody else or the circumstances or the guy next door with a chainsaw or the bus going by outside that's making or whatever it is, right? That's a reactive mental and emotional pattern that's saying this is supposed to be perfect and it's not. Get over that. But don't be a perfectionist about embracing imperfection. Embrace imperfection. Realize that it's okay. Realize that there's something extraordinary that you'll learn if you can embrace imperfection in yourself and others, especially if you're a perfectionist. Think of it as a new dimension of your own ability to get beyond yourself. If you're a perfectionist, it's a really narrow-minded, narrow-hearted way to be. It makes you small, man, woman, whatever you are. It makes you small. It limits you. And embracing imperfection and having compassion in the face of imperfection makes you great. Got to talk more about that one at the right time. Let's move on. Let's talk about kissing your monsters. This is a big one, right? A lot of us have experienced trauma. A lot of us have been conditioned with really intense negative mind states, even if you don't want to call it trauma according to the DSM, whatever we're at right now, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not talking about some narrowly defined clinical psychologist definition of trauma. I'm talking about whatever experiences you may have had in your life as an adult, your life as a child, your life in the womb that may have imbued in your nervous system a reactivity, a hypervigilance, a tendency to fire up the fight, flight, freeze response. That's what I'm calling your monsters, because those monsters are frequently associated with certain life experiences, memories, beliefs, emotions, thought patterns. In the Torah world, we call that a midah. It's like a knot of mental patterning, mental, emotional, energetic patterning that creates an automatic response. And that automatic response can be aligned with your highest purpose, or it can be counter to your highest purpose. And the ones that are misaligned with your highest purpose, that knock you off track, that despite your best intention, suck you into a place you don't want to be. They're the ones who pull you onto the wrong bus and you go down the wrong road and go to the wrong place. Those are your monsters. And you can't cut them out. You can't chop them up. You could anesthetize them so you don't experience them, sure. But that's not going to transform them. Transforming them comes from meeting them and welcoming them. There is a story in my tradition, there's a story in many different traditions, about welcoming the ugliness and deciding that there's good there. Saying Gamzu Latova, saying, what else besides this? What's inside this? How can I meet this really difficult, painful experience and find the part of me that's trapped inside of it? And that happens through presence and compassion. You might need support from somebody else. If you really have serious trauma and every time you go near it, it activates a whole destabilizing issue, then it could be a good idea to get really skilled therapy. And that might be more than just talk therapy. It might be emotional-based therapy. It might be bodily-based therapy. And if all of you've done has been CBT, CBT is great, but CBT doesn't always heal your heart and heal your embodied trauma. And so in the world of contemplative practice and your practice, the invitation is that as you're learning and growing and developing, you might meet your monsters. And whether that's a low-grade irritability, anger, frustration, judgmentalism, fear, sadness, grief, or something deeper and heavier than that, meeting it and welcoming it and not trying to push it away. Because when you push it away, you energize it. When you push it away, you bring it closer. When you welcome it, you have the capacity to let the light of your heart, mind, soul, consciousness penetrate into it. And that's what opens it and frees it and releases it. Do this with care, get support. Have a teacher, have a therapist. Many people use various kinds of substances to help with that in an intelligent, controlled way. Sometimes in an uncontrolled way, whether that's pharmaceuticals or adaptogens, which are natural plant compounds that calm overactive stress response and enable you to meet the hard stuff with more calm. And some people these days are using psychedelic substances, which a lot of what they do is they strengthen the capacity of your prefrontal cortex to be present to the activation of your limbic system. And there's other stuff too, but basically they let you meet the hard stuff. They let you encounter the terrifying or grief-filled memories with presence and compassion and a calmness where you realize this isn't destroying me. And when it's not destroying me, I'm becoming bigger than it. When I'm present to it, I'm bigger than it. I'm not it. I can live with it by holding it with compassion. Okay, so build the skill. The perfection of imperfection and kissing your monsters. Those are all obviously very connected to each other, as you can imagine. The fourth thing I want to mention is choosing life. What do I mean by that? That's a complex thing, and it can be like a religiously loaded term, and I don't mean it that way. What I do mean is that at any given moment, you can choose to be activating thought and emotional processes that are bringing you closer to the things that you care most about, that are attaching you to what you care about, your aspirations, your desires for the future, or you can be pulled into the negative spiral. And if you're dealing with chronic pain and chronic illness, or especially affective illness, you know that negative spiral. You get triggered by that thing that brings a thought and another thought and an emotion, and then you're pulled down the whirlpool. And choosing life is not a simple thing, especially if you have the habits of going down that whirlpool. If your neural networks are wired and connected around that negative spiral, it's a challenge because the goal is to build the capacity and build your neural networks in the other direction. The neural networks that bring you to connection to positivity and to connection and to your aspirations. And so I don't mean to say this, don't get the idea this is like, oh, I'm just going to choose life, because sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes you could be in the habit of choosing the negative spiral. and you took that habit on, and you took that choice on unconsciously. The thing that I want to suggest is that in any moment there is a bit of a choice, and the degree to which you build the skill of actually connecting with your higher faculties, the degree to which you build the skill of being present and being aware of the negativity, of kissing your monsters, of embracing the imperfection, of paying attention and being present and coming back to presence and coming back to presence, regardless of what you're experiencing, that's what builds your capacity to choose. In my tradition, we've got this notion that we have consciousness, or dot. It's awareness, and it's presence and awareness and compassion. And that consciousness can look down towards our embodied physical, emotional self, and it can look down towards the hard, difficult stuff, or it can look up towards your higher faculties, towards your desire to be connected to life, your positivity, your positive sense of self-worth, your connection to people you care and love, your connection to God if that's your thing, your connection to transcendental spirit and human consciousness if that's your thing. We have the capacity to look up to that and look down towards the negativity. Sometimes we need to look down and towards in order to heal those places, to kiss the monsters, to embrace the imperfection, to take the charge out of that stuff, to bring the light down into it. But we've got this beautiful metaphor. It's a Torah metaphor. And it's a metaphor about consciousness looking up towards what brings us to life, or looking down towards what brings us into doubt and confusion. And it's the story of when the Israelites left Egypt, and they encountered this nation called Amalek. And their name encodes the energy of doubt. The actual numeric value of their name is doubt. It's that negative voice that invites you into that downward whirlpool. And in that story of this huge battle that happened, Moses, who represents consciousness and awareness, goes up on the mountain. And here are the words of the verse. When he puts his hands up, then the Israelites prevailed. When he puts his hands down, then the nation that represents doubt prevailed. And when you look in the commentators who are asking, what does that mean? Like, he put his hands up and down and what's going on? It actually explicitly says that, okay, he helped them raise their consciousness upward to connect to the source of inspiration, to connect to the source of life. And when his hands were down, it brought their consciousness down. So I want to suggest that we all have the capacity, through developing the skill, through learning to embrace the challenges and the difficulties and the imperfections, from learning to kiss the monsters and distinguish ourselves from them, from the ability to the skill of drawing positive emotional and spiritual qualities into our presence, we have the ability to learn to reach up, to actually connect to life. And that's how we bring meditative consciousness in life. Because it's not just about practicing and sitting on a chair and then coming back into life and freaking out. It's about bringing that practice into life. The other aspect of this is just simply practicing while in life. There is a meditation practice of life, which means you're waiting at the stoplight, or you're getting ready to go on a trip, or you're about to go on some sort of meeting, and you stop and you feel your feet on the floor, and you let your body relax, and you take a few breaths, and you come back to yourself. You come to the present moment. And you do that during the course of the day. Maybe you put a timer on your watch so every hour and a half you stop, you feel the weight of your body, you release your butt and your back into the chair and your feet on the ground, you take a few conscious breaths. You can do it with your hands on your keyboard, with your eyes open. Put a nice picture on your computer. Nobody needs to know. The point is, you can bring meditative consciousness into everything. And when you bring meditative consciousness into everything, everything becomes part of meditation. And you start to meet life, the pleasures of life and the challenges of life, with presence and with equanimity and with love. And that's when you start to really transform your life and transform your world. And we know that we all need more of that. We know that the world is full of really hard, negative, conflictual stuff here. And if you're on the path of wanting to develop your consciousness, develop your ability to have presence and compassion and live with that, I really, really support you and applaud you in that journey because it's the most important journey. The work you do of growing in this way is going to ripple into your world and communities like waves rippling. You know, you drop a rock in the water. Be the person that makes ripples of love, of compassion, of presence, of intelligence, of the ability to hear differing viewpoints, the ability to make peace despite conflict and disagreement. That's what the world needs. I'm really passionate about helping that happen in the world. And this is my way of doing that, in case you haven't noticed. So if this is fun and interesting for you, I encourage you to tune in more to the Facebook Lives I do. And if you want to join my email community, I encourage you to do that because you'll get notifications about when I do stuff online, when I do longer form posts, and when I do trainings that could be really valuable in helping you along the path of healing yourself from the inside out. So thanks for watching. If you like this, please share it with your friends. You can look in the comments below for a link to join my email community. Thanks a lot. Take care.